Welcome back to the new SEC podcast. I'm Hunter Zeisman here with Randall Ledet Jr. The NFL draft is right around the corner. The combine is getting started. And, a lot of the guys that get attention are those first round guys, those second round guys. But where NFL teams have success over the long term and where GMs make their name is how they draft in the later rounds, those 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round guys. So what we've done is taken a list of those hidden gems maybe later in the draft that aren't getting as much attention, and some of those guys that maybe could perform above their grade. We look at last draft with Malachi Moore, Ja'Cory Krusky-Merritt in the 7th round, Cam Scatabo, Alec Manor. So these are some guys that I think should be getting more attention drawn to their name, and that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, and we're really excited to talk about it. A lot of these guys, receive NFL Combine invites. Some of these guys I got a chance to see at the Senior Bowl this past couple weeks ago, really. And a lot of guys, as you mentioned, to build a Super Bowl roster, a playoff roster, you got to have a mix of guys, not just in the day one side, but day 2, day 3. And we know the SEC is one of the deepest conference when it comes to producing NFL talent and what the NFL talent looks like today. And so it was hard to kind of pick our gems, hence why they're hidden. But I think we both got some good players and some good lists to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is only SEC players for here that we're talking about. We picked 10 of them. I got 5. Randall has 5. So with that, let's get right into it. I'll do my first one here at number 5. We have Febechi Nwaiwu, interior offensive lineman for Oklahoma. He's had a journey up until this point. He started at North Texas before transferring to Oklahoma, primarily a right guard, but he did play some right tackle at North Texas. Finished the season at Oklahoma at center, got second team all SEC honors. Interestingly, he had an East-West Shrine Bowl invitation, played a lot of center there, showcasing that ability, which I think goes to his ability to be one of the hidden gems here because he has the opportunity to play really 3 positions, left guard, center, or right guard, depending on, what NFL team takes him. No sacks given up on the season, only 2 pressures. Where he wins, pass rush reps where it's one-on-one, where he has the ability to win on size and strength. I think he's a late steal because of some of that ability, not only in play, but in leadership. He won the Don Key Award, which if you're an Oklahoma fan, that's really prestigious, goes not only to your play, but your leadership. At the East-West Shrine Bowl, won the Pat Tillman Award. This is a really good, probably day 3 guy for maybe Pittsburgh or Green Bay is kind of where I see it.
Yeah, leadership is a huge intangible when it comes to playing offensive line, and this Oklahoma offensive line did a pretty good job of kind of keeping John Mateer off his back. They only gave up 29 sacks last season. That was in the middle of the conference, and so a guy like this, he's ranked 343rd on the PFF draft board, but he received a combine invite, so that says a lot. He'll be in Indianapolis this week if he chooses to compete, and so going from Denton, Texas, with North Texas, going up to Oklahoma, and then going back to playing in Dallas for the East-West Shrine game. To me, this guy's a hustler and a grinder, and I'm excited to see what he can do at the Combine and what he can potentially do in the NFL. So, number 5 on my list, and there's no particular ranking, is Mike Washington Jr. Got a chance to watch him play in the Senior Bowl in Mobile a couple weeks ago. If anybody who watched the SEC this year knew what he brought to the table, 5th in the conference when it came to rushing yards, 1,070 rushing yards, 31st in the country. What I like about him, 6 foot 2 inches, and I like his story. Starting off, he's from Utica, New York, went from Buffalo, the Buffalo Bulls, played in New Mexico State, and then this was the first season he played at Arkansas, broke 1,000 yards. If you watched him play, you would have thought he was a 1,000-yard rusher every season. When it comes to playing through contact, 7th in the country when it comes to playing through contact and the amount of yards he gets afterwards. So 3.85 yards typically after contact. So very physical runner. Some things that some scouts point out that are areas of improvement is pass blocking. Multiple games from a PFF perspective where he had a pass blocking grade under 55. Some games, 29 points and under. The LSU game gave up three pressures. Texas A&M game gave up 3 pressures, which you don't expect for a guy who's 6'2", but good and agile when it comes to finding the right hole, pushing the right hole, and then 30th in the country when it came to explosive runs over 10 yards. So he had 30 runs over 10 plus yards. So this guy is got in comparison to Latavius Murray, which for people that watch NFL, that's a guy who is a starter or a good second running back option in a tandem system, which is where the NFL is right now.
Yeah. And with him, I think something that gets understated that maybe will help him at the next level is he's a great check down pass option. He's able to, where there's room in the pass block, he's able to get out of that and provide that option for his quarterback. You see that be something that helps in the NFL for like 3 down backs.
Yep.
When you can stay on the field for 3 downs, it's because you have the ability to be a pass catcher, or at least flash that dangerousness to make the defense think. So yeah, I think this is a great pick coming from one of the best offenses in the country.
One of the best offenses in the country. It's not a super deep running back draft, right? You got guys like Jarian Prince and Jeremiah Love, Emmett Johnson from Nebraska, Jonah Washington. So a lot of boards have him between 3rd and 7th when it comes to rankings in the running back position. But can't understate what Hunter said. 200 plus yards in the ground or in the air, 8.1 yards per catch. That's a good, solid option for 3rd down. And when it comes to being a hidden gem in the draft, you got to have an edge. And for a guy like Mike Washington, his edge is being relatively solid at everything. Like, he's a good downhill runner. He's good at finding the holes. He's decent when it comes to making receptions. That's his edge. He's not, as of now, superb at one singular thing, but he's really good across the board. And I feel like that's the perfect definition of Latavius Murray when I think about how he was as a runner and a player in the NFL.
4th on my list, I have his quarterback, Taylen Green for Arkansas. You know, we could debate looking at the quarterback class this year. I'm not sure there's anyone in the quarterback draft right now for this season that has more athletic ability or intangibles than Taylen Green. You know, you look at his size at 6'6", his ability as a runner, leading, like I said, understated, maybe one of the best offenses in the country at Arkansas. You know, if you watch the games, you saw where that 446 yards per game came from. It came, from the quarterback position in the way of his ability to do read options, get Mike Washington involved, get the receivers involved. Right now he's hovering kind of at 7th or 8th on the, quarterback big board right now. That's before the combine, which I think is really an opportunity for him to move up the list. If you look at what NFL scouts are looking for and what they'll see at the combine, you're going to see his ability to throw to the sidelines. He has the strength and accuracy for that, to push tight window plays. He has a lot of confidence when it comes to that. You pair that with the solid ability to identify opportunities to keep the ball and take off and run. That's something that has excelled in the NFL as of late, that some of the evasiveness. He's the number 1 quarterback in rush yards per attempt among starters, 8.8. He had 56 first downs with his legs alone. Looking at him throughout the season, if you watched Arkansas football, there was a lot of flashes of first-round talent. If his play style was consistent all year and he didn't have, some of the mistakes, some of the turnover-worthy plays that happened, I think it's a first-round guy. And the combine's only going to be an opportunity for him to move up. I think it's an incredible project development tool quarterback for a lot of NFL teams who maybe don't need a guy first day, can bring someone in, develop some of the consistency. I got him early, mid day 2. I think a team like the Rams, the Cardinals. I'll throw Pittsburgh in here again as an option for him as someone who could develop this guy into a really solid quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head just about everything that Taylen Green provides. And he's a guy that has shown amazing flashes. I mean, he started the season off, I think, with 5 or 6 touchdowns against Alabama A&M. Finished the year 19 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 9th best QBR in the country, 82.8. There's just certain things about his game you can't coach. You can't coach that speed. You can't coach that size, stature, 6'6". Good guy in general, right? Does well in the press. Senior Bowl invite, got to play in the game. We are all aware of the areas of improvement, ball management, being able to kind of make sure you keep possession of the football, something that actually plagued both him and Mike Washington. But what he offers is the size, and it's worth coaching him up. And I like the pick of the Cardinals or like the Niners or the Rams, teams that have a quarterback in place. Even the Jaguars, he just needs the right coaching to me.
Yeah.
Like, if he had another year of eligibility and he got to play for a team with the right coaching, I think the sky would have been limitless for him. And so I like that pickup in terms of a hidden gem. Number 4 on my list, I have Taurean York. He's got a 4th round projection. If it wasn't for his size at 5'10", 227, he's probably day 1. Like, this is a guy that if you watch his film, you could tell he just knows what to do between the white lines. Like, he knows football very, very well. Last season, 72 tackles, 3 pass deflections, 1 sack. He's had over 5.5 sacks the previous 2 seasons. 10th on the PFF linebacker board. It's a deep draft. I mean, there's some guys like Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles. There's a lot of good talent at the linebacker position, but the intangibles: captain, freshman All-American, freshman SEC All-American. When you look at his number 1 skill set, it's kind of in that Eamon window, 9th in the PFF window when it came to coverage grade. So 28 completions off of 34 attempts, never gave up more than 7 yards in terms of coverage on him. So he's really good at sideline to sideline, protecting his zone, and he reads really well before the snap. So he can look at what's happening before the snap, coach his defense to make adjustments, break up screens, ultimately kind of jump routes. That is where, when I talk about that edge, you have to have a differentiator, and at his size, his speed is his edge.
I think you hit it with the football IQ piece of knowing where to be at all times. I think his ability comes from being a ball hawk, finding the play, shooting the gap. If you watch, A&M throughout the season, wherever the play is happening, you will find him there. He has the ability to break behind the line as well. There's a lot of good teams out there that are good at developing linebackers. I'm going to throw maybe a Kansas City Chiefs projection out here for Taurean York. So I like this pick as a gem, and I think he could definitely perform above the potential grade that he's given.
Absolutely. I mean, I think he reminds me a lot of a Landon Roberts from University of Houston. My school, smaller guy in terms of the NFL size, but just knows football really well. And like you said, can play both sides. I like the Eagles, maybe. I like the Chiefs, like you mentioned. Just put him in a winning organization, which a lot of times happens with these later round picks. He's going to accelerate as a captain as well. So,
absolutely. Number 3 for me, I have an interesting story here. Michael Taaffe for Texas, a former walk-on turned into an all-SEC player. Quite a story, and it comes from his ability to have that high motor, be all over the field like we're talking about with some of these other guys. He's an excellent coverage safety. He was also really successful for Texas this season when he got to go down into the box, get involved in high-traffic plays. From 2024 to 2025, all he's done is improved on pretty much every skill set, the big piece of that being tackling, 47 tackles this season. 2 picks, got one against his rival, Texas A&M. We're looking at hidden gems in the draft. If Michael Taaffe was 2 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier, I think he's a round 2, probably the second safety off the board just behind Caleb Downs. Right now, probably the 4th, 5th safety off the board right now. If you're taking someone who has a really high football IQ, can communicate really well from the safety position, and you're only limiting him on size, if we're high on coverage ability, we're high on tackling, play recognition, field general communication, then you can't pass on him. I think he's someone that if you get him at a valuable round, he can fit into certain schemes. Where I see him excelling on a team is, where defensively they have the opportunity to make him a single high safety, play some slot where needed, step down into the box, kind of play as a robber as well. I think he's a guy who he's a situational player where you're able to use some of his football IQ, communication skills to create a scheme that he can operate really, really well in. Strategic positioning, big piece, placement on the field. So I'm looking kind of at a New England. I might even say the Cowboys for a day 2 pick.
The Cowboys would be great, right? The Westlake Christian native and Austin, Texas native would love nothing more probably to play in Texas. And I don't know what team he grew up supporting, but I know how far Austin is from Dallas, Texas, and I'm a Cowboys fan, so naturally I would love that pickup. But this guy, I mean, he's had a great career at Texas. We got to see him at the SEC Media Days. He was one of the representatives for Texas, before the season, and just a great career at the program. 10 pass deflections in 2024. 2025, he had 1. That kind of tells me that teams were starting to not test him as much. They kind of knew what he could bring at the safety position. Multiple seasons of double-digit interceptions, so he finds himself near the ball, and he's a leader. He's a captain, Texas native. There's so many great things you could say about Michael Taaffe, and I think a locker room would offer a lot to a locker room in general.
Yeah.
So number 3 on my side, I think it's similar leadership skill set. Jake Slaughter, offensive lineman, center from Florida. Right now, he's got a 3rd round projection. For some, this might not seem like a hidden gem. I think the fact that a guy who typically ranks when you look at ESPN's projections between Mel Kiper and Field Yates, 2nd to 5th best center on the board. He only gave up 4 pressures in 2025. He only gave up 1 sack last year. 2-time captain, 2-time first team All SEC. I think he has a lot of the intangibles. The size is there, 6'4", 303 pounds. I mean, if Florida only gave up 20 sacks last season, he only gave up 1 of them. The one game that he kind of probably played not as clean as other games was against Ole Miss, and they got a guy named Eccles who's in the draft as well. So he's a solid guy, and I think overall I really like what what Jake Slaughter could bring to an NFL team.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a day one starter on some teams. I mean, he has the ability to be a day one player. So depending on the center need, I think some teams are going to be monitoring what's going on, or do we need to trade up, or team's going to pass on him? Is he going to fall to us? I think, when you get a good quality franchise center, that's one of those positions that you hope to keep for many, many years. You don't want to, you see it with wide receivers, some other positions where get him in for a contract and then you move on to the next one. A center is a guy, if you can build an O-line around him, he could be that for some teams. Could be a day one pick, depending on the need from a couple teams. But yes, absolutely a hidden gem that maybe isn't getting enough talked about right now.
Yeah. And a lot of this stuff can change, right? This week we're recording this is the NFL Combine. So some of these guys are getting their interviews for the first time from some of these coaches, or second and third interviews. They're getting comparisons against their peers. That is the things that we have seen rise, have some players rise, have some players fall. I mean, we know what the circus was last year at the NFL Combine and what players were involved. But Jake Slaughter is a clean-cut guy, Florida native, and I think he could really add a lot to a team.
Number 2 for me, as we're getting kind of down the home stretch here. Number 2, Dae'Quan Wright, tight end from Ole Miss. This big tight end draft class this year, but you look at Dae'Quan Wright and what he was able to do at Ole Miss in a really high-powered offense. He was an excellent target for Chambliss all year. Accounted for 30 first downs through the air. Really a big-framed wide receiver more than a tight end. There were games this year where when he builds up that speed, playing more traditional wide receiver routes, he's tough to take down. He does have the speed that isn't really something that guys of his size have. At the next level, I think he's going to be a great target on routes that break across the middle. He can catch in stride. If you look at the tape for Ole Miss Arkansas, there's a good play in there in the first half where you saw him get that speed across the middle. He's great at catching those 5-6 yard passes and taking them house. It's too hard to take down when he gets ahead of steam going. In the NFL, I think there's potential for development for him. It wasn't a tight end heavy offense at Ole Miss, but where he can develop, pass blocking being a big piece there, maybe some more tight end specific routes. We saw him better in crossers, but he was able to find some space on curls and hitches. That's where he maybe at the next level, he would be a project to develop, is how do you have him kind of sit and plant at the line of scrimmage? You're a big body guy, sit and plant at the first down marker and catch some of those passes. I see this as a really late round steal. There are other tight ends that are getting a lot of attention, but some of the things that stand out from him as well, catching the ball with his hands away from the body, finding open space. Watch the tape on him and you'll find a lot of times where he runs his route a little bit different to find space on the field and get some extra yardage. NFL offensive coordinators will look at a guy like this and can see in their mind some offensive mismatches. By moving him around to more wide receiver positions. We saw that work at Ole Miss where they got him outside, kind of, that center, put him out more wide. I'm going to go with a pick that maybe some aren't expecting. I'm going to go with Denver here.
Okay.
As a potential landing spot for him. I think there's been some ties for Denver to take one of the higher projected tight ends in the draft. But I'm going to take Dae'Quan Wright as one of those late round guys that maybe would be a better value option for Sean Payton there in Denver.
Yeah, I like that pick and that fit with Denver and that offense that he's building there with Bo Nix. I mean, the team obviously one game away from the Super Bowl and made a tremendous jump from where they were 2 years ago. Dae'Quan Wright, I agree. He's a steal. He's a gamer. You saw him make some big plays against Miami in the playoffs, right? The result wasn't a win, but big time 2-point conversion, big time plays against Georgia in that Sugar Bowl, that second round. Another Lane Kiffin just masterclass in finding talent. Picking him from Virginia Tech, developing over the last 2 years, going from 394 yards to 635 yards, 5 touchdowns this season. He's got a good frame, 6'4", 255, Perry, Georgia native. He could be a really impactful guy. And I think at the tight end position, it's pretty normal to be second, third, fourth, fifth round pick. Guys like, Ferguson and from former Cowboy or current Cowboy and some of these other guys in the league as well were later draft round guys that still perform. And so this guy's a steal. I think he's still developing and it's a great gem for a team that potentially could land him.
Yeah. I want to see if he'll become a full down guy for a team as a tight end instead of just being situational. Because I think right now his skill set lends him to be situational where you put him on the field, defenses have to play a little bit against his skill set, where if you can develop maybe some more, running the seams, pass blocking, he could be a full down guy for a team who can utilize him to his full potential.
Definitely. I could definitely see that. Like I said, we're in the home stretch here. So my number 2 guy, Tim Keenan III, defensive lineman. He's got a 4th round projection. I don't know if he was eligible to come out last year, but he had an amazing season last season, and he's built a great career. Love to see guys who stay at the program for all their years. So Alabama guy, of course, Birmingham, Alabama native, 10th on PFS defensive lineman board. Again, deep draft. We got Peter Woods from Clemson, Caleb Banks from Florida, Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. Christian Miller from Georgia, right in the backyard here for me in Athens, Georgia. Caden McDonald from Ohio State. But don't sleep on Tim Keenan. In 2024, 40 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. What I like to see is their stats getting better. So he went from 1.5 TFLs in 2023 to 7.5 in 2024. So that's 6 more TFLs. He had a couple games he was injured at the beginning of the year, so his stats don't tell the story so much for 2025, but he's going to be known for a run stopper. He spent a lot of time in 2025 kind of in the A gap position, 201 snaps in 2024, 285 snaps in the B gap position. He's 6'2", 320 plus pounds. He's a beast. He's a very, very sizable guy. We have a guest on our show very often, Davin Bellamy, that talks about the importance of stopping the run and how if you want to be a championship team, you have to go stop the run. And this is the guy that I think his floor is, rotational defensive lineman. I think his ceiling could be regular starter for a team with the right conditioning, the right health, and the right fit. Put him on a team like the Giants, who struggled to stop the run last year, or put him on the Bengals or the Packers, who could use some of that run stop on the front line. He's a great guy. And again, in 7 games this year, 16 tackles, 2 sacks. You're not going to get a ton of pass rush pressure, but that's why I'm really over-indexing on his ability to stop the run.
Yeah, it's a good point to bring out the injuries that he had at Alabama. There was a lot of injuries to the Alabama D-line as a whole this year. So whenever someone was healthy, these highly talented guys, LT Overton, Tim Keenan, when they were playing, there was a lot of attention on the singular guy who was healthy, putting double teams against him. You look at what he did from last season to this season, he slimmed out a little bit to add some explosiveness. But yeah, often facing game planning against him. I think one of the things that drops him down a little bit is, the height, frame, build, and all of that, to where, he can't really get a whole lot bigger at this point.
Yeah.
But if he can continue to add explosiveness in the pass rush, he could be a really good pickup for a team. We've seen a lot of success from Alabama guys in the NFL. He could just be one more. Last one here. My number one, hidden gem here, the last guy on the list. I have Xavian Sorey Jr. out of Arkansas. This is a 7th, 6th round projected guy. One of the most skilled late round grabs I think that there is. Just looking at skill set overall. He spent 3 years at Georgia as a 5-star recruit out of high school before going to Arkansas. He has top tier athleticism and ability to essentially be all over the field. We saw that in his games at Arkansas. He's great in coverage because of the speed that he has. He has athleticism and tackling. I think he's an every down player and could be early on in his NFL career because he fits multiple schemes and formations. He can play, on the line as an outside linebacker. On the pass rush, he can step back kind of into that, middle linebacker position because he's good in cover and man coverage as well and zone. Where he's getting projected so late, despite having these physical and athletic gifts, is because a bit of a limited play time in his collegiate career. He limited in his time at Georgia, only had about 300 plays in his 3 seasons there before Arkansas, primarily special teams. Had some good plays at Georgia against Alabama in the SEC championship. There's still room for development, though. 52 tackles this last season, 23 pressures. There's many teams that I see taking a late round stab here. If you're going to take your late round guys, you see a lot of 7th rounds not necessarily make the roster or not get a lot of playing time in their rookie year. This is one from a linebacker position. There's teams that have developed linebackers really well, that with the right tools, time, fit, he can add a lot to different positions on the field. There's been injuries at linebackers in the NFL where you might want someone like this who has a bit of versatility and variety. I think, number one, we talked about, Kansas City earlier with Taurean York. I think that's another good one, or Washington. But really, I'm looking at Detroit. I'm looking at the Lions and what they've done with Jack Campbell, what they've done, with that linebacker room, Anzalo and Rodriguez when he's healthy. This could be a good one to continue to raise his ceiling and develop him from where maybe he didn't have that experience in college.
Definitely, and I like the experience he had at Georgia. It might not be a ton of experience in the field, but I think just being in that locker room with Kirby Smart and that defense, and being a part of that program says a lot. Like I know what it means from a development perspective. 81 total tackles. You talked about the 52 solo tackles, 8th in the SEC in tackles. It felt sometimes that, watching Arkansas, they were kind of in this catch tackles position, right? They weren't the best when it came to stopping the run or stopping the pass, but he was everywhere where the ball was at, and he was doing his best to make plays. And it's definitely worth a late round, reach. Jerry Jones, my guy, a little biased to some of these Arkansas players, so I could see him reaching for a guy like Xavian Sorey in later rounds if he is available.
I like that. I like that pick. I could see him there in Dallas too.
Yeah. So the last one for me, it's kind of floating between hidden and known, but Brandon Cisse, South Carolina. If you read some reports, he's been ranked as high as 29th in terms of a first round grade, but a lot of reporters have him more in that second round projection. North Carolina State former player from Sumter, South Carolina, overall Kakalaki guy, right? So 27 tackles, 19 solo tackles, 5 pass breakups, and 1 forced fumble, 1 interception in his 2 seasons out there in Raleigh, bringing it down to South Carolina, back home. He balled out. He's got a great height. He's about 6 foot tall. He's great when it comes to stopping the run. I think this is an essential skill set now at the cornerback position in the NFL. And he's played some really good lockdown corner against some strong pass offenses. So only 5 yards allowed from his position against Vanderbilt, 37 yards allowed against Missouri, 6 yards allowed on 1 reception against Alabama. They lost all those games, but it wasn't because of South Carolina's defense.
Yeah. I think it's a great one that should be a first round grade. I think he could turn into a cornerback 1 on any team because of what he has that isn't teachable. You can teach a guy zone coverage, how to have that better IQ and where you should be and when to pass your man off. What you can't teach is you can't teach man coverage, and you really sure can't teach press man. And that's something that he's able to do, is press guys at the line. It's one of those things that you either got it or you don't. And when you're looking at the NFL and some of these really, really good receivers that if you let them get ahead of steam, get running, they're hard to cover. Jamming them at the line is something that he brings to teams, and that's going to be apparent as they're looking to evaluate him for where they draft him.
Definitely. I mean, and it speaks to the stat around, he was 23rd in the country when it came to yards allowed per reception. You line up against a guy like Brandon Cisse, you're going to feel it all game. He's going to press you all game. It's just a deep cornerback draft. I go back to that. That's why these gems are hidden. Jermod McCoy, Avion Terrell, Mansour Delane in his own conference, right? Colton Hood, Keith Abney from Arizona State, D'Angelo Pons emerged on the scene. Obviously undersized guy, but a lot of intangibles. And then you got Cisse there at 8th. When you look at the CBS big board, this guy is a steal. I love the South Carolina defensive players. We saw what Eamon Warrior did in the Super Bowl and what he's been doing in the playoffs. And scouts really love those raw intangibles. He played across from Vakari Swain, Jalen Kilgore, seen player comps as great as, J.C. Horn, Darius Slay, to even, Cody Bryant or Kobe Bryant. So those are all good NFL players, obviously some higher than others, but this is a very strong, talented cornerback and a guy that I'd love to see, on the right team.
Yeah. I like these picks. I think all 10 of these are guys who could overachieve to their expectations. I mean, there's some that we could have had on this list, 2 guys out of LSU that I want to give a little honorable mention to is AJ Halsey and Jack Pyburn. I think those are 2 more that could have made this list, that where they're projected and where they could potentially be is even higher. I mean, anyone else that you had that maybe are some guys that didn't make the list that you're looking out for?
Yeah. A couple of the guys that I got a chance to bump into at the Senior Bowl, Josh Cuevas, your guy from Alabama, tight end, super deep tight end draft, and Garrett Nussmeier. I think, what he brings from a quarterback position, quarterback father, NFL kind of knowledge, coaching knowledge. I think he's a film warrior, and with the right team, he's not going to start, I don't think, this season, but I do think that he can add a lot to the quarterback room. So those are a couple guys that come to mind. We look at hidden gems in this draft, or players you want to take a stab at and have in OTAs and have in your fall camp when you're thinking about your roster from that 92 to 62.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, if you're watching now, you have some day 2, day 3 guys that, if you're listening, you're high on some guys, let us know who they are. Let us know what you think about our picks here. If you have maybe a projection on where some of these guys could go. If you're an Oklahoma fan, we talked a lot of Arkansas players here, coming from there offensively and defensively. As always, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to continue to make content through the off season, do more draft content as we prepare for the NFL season, for the upcoming college football season. I'm Hunter Zeisman here with Randall Ledet Jr., and thank you for tuning in to our hidden gems in the NFL draft for 2026.